What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about the transcendental argument for God's existence, or commonly known as TAG. So basically, let me just give you a rundown on what a transcendental argument is. It's very similar to modus tollens or modus ponens, but it's not the same. But it's very similar. It's X is the necessary condition or precondition of Y. If Y exists, therefore X exists. So it's basically if X is, existing, and it's also the necessary condition for Y existing. If Y is the answer, then clearly by necessity, X is also the case. It's like if I have a cake, right? If I had this cake and it was in front of me and I put it on the table, I then have all of the necessary preconditions of that cake. I'll have the flour, I have the eggs, I have the sugar, I have the icing. I have all of these things because I have the cake. Because it necessitates the need of those ingredients. Now, the transcendental argument, would go like this. First, we ground these transcendental preconditions. So things like time and space, the self, words and meaning, the past, universals, ethics. And so basically, time and space is a category you cannot empirically verify. Time itself is an abstract category. Same with space. Time isn't proven, empirically. And same with space. It's a measurement at which light travels. We also experience the world from beginning to middle to end. There's no human being that experiences things in reverse. We also experience and learn things within a spatial field, a temporal field, and that's how we learn things. There's no human who does it in a different way. And so, how do we prove this empirically? And the answer is we can't. It's an assumed transcendental precondition of knowledge and experience. The A theory of time has no empirical verification for time in of itself. The object, the abstract category of time itself has no correlation to the empirical verification, to sense data. Now, time has effects on that which is material, but you can't directly correlate empirical testing or measurements to time itself because it's not empirically tested. It's an abstract category. It exists, it's not material, it's transcendent. The self, you can't empirically verify, you can't empirically demonstrate you have the self. It's a presupposed, in all actions of cognition, communication, and things like that. No test tube, no microscope will show you that you have the self. Words also, the presupposition the words have meaning and they convey meaning to others. That's another transcendental category. There's no empirical evidence or verification that you are transmitting the right meaning to another brain, to another bunch of grey matter. That has to be assumed that you're actually conveying, truth to those people. You're conveying meaning. You're conveying the, correct, ideas, right? Basically, this argument has to be assumed. It has to be presupposed in a sense that the words and the meanings of this argument has to be presupposed that it's correct. Now, we'll get to that later. Why do we presuppose? Why do we trust in these things? The past. That's, that thing, the past, this is something we cannot empirically prove exists or existed. It's assumed in a way, we as humans experience time and operate. Now, in the A theory of time, past existed at one point, but it ceases to exist. So the way that the A theory of time puts it is that the future is a potential existence. Now, the future will be actualized when we come into the present. And when the present is over and done with, and we get to the past, then it ceases to exist. Universals, there's no empirical verification for universal categories, invariant concepts, numbers, but we do know they exist. We know numbers exist. Now, the grounding of numbers, the understanding of numbers, the concepts and the kind of systems that we use to, truly understand how numbers work and react, I guess, is, that's a social construct. These things, there's, subjectivity to, numbers. But numbers, when you take them away from, this world, this earth, the concepts, um, the basic systems that we kind of put forth to understand what numbers are. When you take all that away, you begin to realize that numbers in of themselves are universal. They exist independent of the human mind. They exist external to the material world. They do really exist. Ethics would be another one. Is ethics under a rock? Is ethics, is it hiding in your room somewhere? Where is ethics? Where in the microscope or the test tube are ethics? They are not here because they are just assumed positions. They're not empirically verified. Let's get to the argument. So, like I said before, the transcendental argument goes like this, right? Then this is as simple as I can put it, right? If you can understand the transcendental argument and what a transcendental argument is, you can understand the transcendental argument for God. It's the most simple thing. It's not rocket science. It's not hard to understand. It's if I have a cake, right? I have a cake in front of me. By necessity, I will then also have all of the necessary preconditions of the cake. Because for that cake to exist, you need those preconditions. But for those preconditions to also exist, we're assuming these preconditions exist because we have the cake, right? And that cake implies that we have these things existing. Just because we can't see these things doesn't mean that we don't know they exist. We would presuppose that they exist because we have the cake and we know the cake's made up of those things. So the argument would be basically people use universal truth claims that are transcendental, they're immaterial in their worldviews. And justification for these transcendentals cannot be accounted for empirically. The only thing that can justify why we use these things is God. Therefore, God exists due to these things existing, because he's the only justification. Now, the atheist's burden of proof would be to show that there is another thing, or another someone or something or whatever it may be that can account for these non-empirically verified, transcendental, invariant universal categories that we see within the universe. They're real, they're there, and they exist. So it would be up to the atheist to show why these things can be accounted for outside, external from God. And they can't. It's impossible. And the other thing that's a hindrance for the atheists is to assume or presuppose that you have knowledge of these things without actually having justification for why you have knowledge. Atheists, very scientific-minded people are obsessed with having, knowledge, I guess. They're obsessed with having an understanding. But the thing is, ethics, morality, numbers, time, space, all of these things, knowledge in of itself, right? That's a transcendental category. You can't have knowledge if, you're presupposing, these things. You're basically saying that knowledge is there, or we have knowledge because we have knowledge. They have no justification for why they have knowledge. They don't know why. They just say we have knowledge because we have knowledge. Ethics exist because ethics exist. They have no account for why these things actually exist. They can't give evidence. They can't give justification. And so why use these things? Why do you have confidence in using these things if you don't know if they're reliable or not?